You are watching Xirtus.
3D 360 sound systems are invented for Fantasia, and Disney's doing this sort of surround sound thing. People who study that in California are involved with Augustus Stanley Osley, right? Who's making LSD. And so the Grateful Dead are the first band to have something like Fantasia sound. And then that allows them to, because there's delays and distance from cables, to have echoing for also there's like huge shows that are having hundreds of thousands of people that have maybe a kilometer distance between some speakers. So they're able to make this crazy binaural field where you're hearing something on the left side and you're hearing something on the right side the way you normally could only do with your earphones. But this is being broadcast from hundreds of speakers on one side, hundreds of speakers on the other side, and it's back and you're inside of that field. So you're hitting not just your ears, you're not just hitting your chest, you're getting your entire body. In the same way, if you go to a powwow, you get that entire rhythm, right? So
That's,
I think,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You're saying great stuff. It's just there's stuff I want to add to it. Yeah. Go ahead.
I would bring up drugs and how that affects this as well, probably because there's always like you can see when speed and cocaine and everything were a big part of the Grateful Dead and how that affects music as well. I think dubstep was clearly comes out of cannabis culture, so it has a lower heartbeat. But that's not something that continues after Skrillex necessarily because it became so popular amongst video game kids.
I think there's something weird about dubstep too. That it's one of those few music genres that has such a specific date to it. There's not a lot of different music genres you can be like, oh, that sounds like this year, and dubstep kind of has that.
Totally. Well, it was a short-lived thing as far as its heyday, right? It was like just became hugely popular all of a sudden, and then then people would think that they're going to a festival that was going to just be like huge, and it's like hardly anybody showed up, and that's kind of like dubstep didn't go completely the way of the dodo, kind of transmuted into something else. But then but I was going to say is like what you're saying about Fantasia. That's a really good point. Fantasia was a flop when it first came out, even despite being it was so ahead of its time, right? And so much about the sound because that was the whole thing. Is he basically made like a sync film with symphonic music,
Totally.
right? Like they explain it at the beginning, like they tell you exactly what it is that they're doing, but then it became hugely popular in the 60s. So it had like this, and they brought it back into the theaters, and everybody wanted to take acid to go watch Fantasia for a while there, and that was kind of completely tied to 1968 when 2001: A Space Odyssey came out with the tagline "The Ultimate Trip." So it's like encouraging people to take psychedelics when they go to see this movie. It was like a nudge, not as good as a wink to a blind bat kind of thing with that. Like that's at least they're trying to appeal in the advertising in that way. Like this is a mind bending experience, but the sound of 2001 is as significant as it was, like you say, with Fantasia. In fact, it's argued, I think this might even be confirmed. You might know, Alex, those those cubes or diamonds when they're in Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite, that are like across the screen. Like if you see it widescreen, you can see, I forget how many there are, maybe seven. Seven. Yeah. So it said that those specifically are supposed to be relaying what the sound system is. So the way that for the Cinerama, the way that the sound system was set up was like new, specific. It was made specific for 2001: A Space Odyssey, and like the main, like the big places where it was initially showing, like in the premiere and stuff, like they had this way of dialing the sound that hadn't been done before. I'd have to look up the particulars. It's been a while, but I guess there's a strong argument for that's supposed to be representing the speakers themselves or where they're situated or whatever, the way that they show you that. And yeah, I think Rob
like
Agger
a calibration thing, or like
that they're communicative of that. There's actually a giant sync around 2001: A Space Travesty and his death too, because he's a star child in that,
But I think also too. I don't think that Disney had planned for the original 1940s Fantasia that everyone was going to be taking mushrooms, even though they were watching people dancing that were mushrooms. I honestly think he was looking for assistant, that magical experience where you didn't need drugs in order to expand your mind, which is something that wasn't necessarily what everyone needed in World War II. But by the 60s, you have people that are just trying to expand their mind instantly. Anyway,
don't you think that those people working for Disney were just high as hell too? Because I was told that this has been a thing that goes back to the beginning, that Walt was a secret, participant when it came to psychedelic use, like all the way through his career.
I think he was
Like-
kind of a hypocrite and didn't really like people working for him to have a mustache like he had a mustache, or like to smoke like he smoked, or he really kind of wanted people to work hard on his ideas, you know, and he couldn't draw a mouse.
This should have been the full, like, this movie. How much time do we have for this section of the Dolly movie that was made? It's like
Oh my God.
15 minutes or something.
No, they finished it now, and during Fantasia 2 in 1999, they used computer graphics. I think ILM helped them do it.
Yeah, Fantasia 2000.
Yeah, and they
Well, the original
Dolly movie. There's going to be a full movie. This was a pitch.
Well, the
okay.
original premise of Fantasia, though, was that they were going to make a whole bunch of them. And I mean, originally it was that they were going to go around the country showing off Fantasia. And every time you would go, you might see different little clips, and it would be accompanied by different music. And depending on what city and what time of year you went, you would get a different version of Fantasia. And then the Dali one, it took like, I don't know, like 100 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it took a very long time. They're like 50 years to finally get it done because it never made the original cut. And then here we've got
there's
Fantasia
a
2000.
full feature of the Dolly movie.
No, it's like 15 minutes long.
That is the full clip of it.
For,
But it was,
for those 15 minutes, right.
Yeah,
I got it.
correct.
Yeah, well, exactly, because Fantasia has all these different shorts, and they were going to replace songs as time went on forever, right, with new videos,
You know,
but no one cared about it.
That's kind of sad because that kind of reminds me of like Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune, like that people would refer to as the greatest movie never made or whatever. But he wanted Salvador Dali to be in that movie, and he was like going to do a trick where it was like he's going to say he was the highest paid actor that had ever happened in any movie, but he was going to only have him for one brief scene and then have like a stand-in for the rest or something that was like funny. Do you know what I'm talking about? You probably saw that documentary. Right?
Did with Brad Pitt. They just had him as a dog barking, so they just had bark like.
You're talking about George Clooney? You're talking
George
about
Clooney, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Dude, that's so funny that you'd say that. I just talked about that. With somebody like super recently. I brought up George Clooney as the dog because you guys told me, one of you told me that Elon Musk was actually, they used his voice for that, for what is it, season 19 or 20? Yeah. So
For what? Season 20 of what?
he played himself, like he's himself in the movie, like it's actually Elon Musk's voice.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
to add on to the heart thing, because this is kind of interesting, because the They're Not Like Us song won all the Grammys, and it performed at the biggest television show in the world, the Super Bowl, where they were playing the song Not Like Us, which is directly connected to the heart rhythm. Even the National like Heart Association or whatever approved the song for CPR, kind of like staying alive. And a lot of decoders have shown there's a lot of heart stuff where that guy falls on the field and then they throw up like the little heart symbol as well. So I bet you there's something there with different beats and stuff. Like, why did everyone like just resonate with that song? And it could be on a like a somatic level.
Yeah, if you're trying to use a song for that, don't use Pink Floyd's Money because it'll totally throw it off and they might die.
Really?
I'm just
That's
saying
the
because the count is weird. Sorry. But it came to mind because Dark Side of the Moon begins and ends with a heartbeat, you know, which is like the rainbow wrapping around. So if you actually have that record, like if you have Dark Side of the Moon on LP and you look at the jacket of it, the way that the beam connects to the beam in the back, because it's a triangle facing one way and a triangle facing the other in the front and the back. You have a Star of David in the in Dark Side of the Moon, but you only see one side at a time. So it's kind of like there's no Dark Side of the Moon really. As a matter of fact, it's all dark. So like the beam connects and the rainbow connects to itself. So it's an infinite loop, which is like the album itself, which you loop it if you're watching it with the Wizard of Oz, you know, black and white, back to black and white. Yeah, it's trippy.
Wow.
Or 2001.
Or 2001. It's true.
I've heard that particular album syncs with a lot of movies because it was structured similar to how a movie would be structured.
Dark Side of the Moon will sync with absolutely everything. You could play it with Wheel of Fortune; it doesn't matter. But in my experience, it doesn't sync as well as it does with The Wizard of Oz, with anything else, except maybe 2001: A Space Odyssey, especially if you're high.
Is this because of what you're saying, paranoid? Because every film is the same?
Because there's a formula to the way.
That more like that. Yeah, like the Pink Floyd kind of exposes the same formula, the same algorithm, so it meshes really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you almost can't go wrong. Everything will sync with everything to some degree, but sometimes it crosses a line. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon crosses a definite line with The Wizard of Oz in very specific places all throughout, where you're like, wait a minute, though, really though. And then if you're looking here with The Wiz syncs with Goodbye Yellow Brick Road like nobody's business. I'm trying to tell people about this for years. But Blood Lies Bleeding in My Hand, Funeral for a Friend, the way that the lines, like if you started at the beginning of the film. I have this on my Twitter, by the way, in my highlights somewhere, and it's also on the website. But so like when they go to the two towers in this movie and they go around that sphere that the designer of the two towers had placed between them, that they rotated every 24 hours to symbolize the Kaaba at Mecca, which I have screenshots of from Wikipedia. Luckily, they've since removed it. So Wikipedia will no longer tell you. It was a quote from the architect of the two towers telling you that sphere was symbolic of the Kaaba at Mecca, and that they rotated it once every 22 hours or 24 hours, excuse me, to represent the people who do the pilgrimage, like rotating around the cube. So that's just crazy. But so anyway, that they dance around that cube in the middle of the film, and like that whole portion is like, as far as like sync films go, it's one of the most epic, like can work as a like the ultimate kind of music video in and of itself, but like they're keep looking up at the two towers as the Emerald City. Have you seen that before? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I just have to comment that this is my favorite movie, The Wiz, otherwise known as Bodo. I don't know why you brought that up, but I love this movie.
This is another Wiz. I've seen this.
Have you seen this movie, Bodo?
Yeah,
The Wiz?
Yeah, a long time ago when I was a kid.
Oh my god, that is like the weirdest Oedipus thing. I don't know. Like he
I need to watch it as an adult now.
I'll send it. Also, I have it only in German. He shotguns his mother, the clone. So this kid won't do. He's not masculine enough. So his rich parents are having him take fencing classes with this psychiatrist, and then he's got a supercomputer because it's like 1982. Or 87 because it's Germany. He builds a cloning rig, and he has an egg, and he puts his blood and his DNA, and he clones himself, but he makes himself like more masculine and more in charge, more alpha. And this dude like dances with his mother, this clone of himself, and it makes his mother feel young, and then his mother like is there, and he takes his mother's cigarette, and then he puffs it, and he's like 13. And then like she shotguns him, and they're about to make out, and then she's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" It's like the craziest movie.
Wait, are you talking about Wiz Kids still?
No, this is Wiz. You just showed the wrong trailer. That VHS you have there is not the Wiz Kids. That's
this
the Wiz.
Is the one I'm talking about. The whole time you're talking, Andreas, I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" That's not what I remember this being. But okay.
Isn't that it? The Wiz Kid, right? That's the one.
Oh, this is it.
Wiz Kid. Yeah, it's like Bodo.
I think I am thinking about another movie anyway, and I'm not thinking of The Wizard. I was looking at the cover of that, and it reminded me of something else.
You're talking about the one where the kids.
Yeah, Bodo is a kid with abnormally high intelligence, a samurai sword-toting father, and a robotic orangutan.
Pop on my screen for a second. Pop on my screen. And so this movie's got this great song by this Polynesian German dude named Taco. And it's like, I'm heavy metal, simply heavy metal. And that's his hot mom. And then he's like, look, he's cucking himself. He's outside the window watching as the clone of himself comes down the stairs in perfect 80s garb and starts dancing with his own.
Dude, did you go back in time and make this, Andreas?
Bro, this movie made me. I'm pretty sure like a big part of why I'm screwed up is this movie. I don't know.